Hello and good morning and welcome to the meeting of the Economy, Infrastructure and Communities Overview and Scrutiny Committee today, Tuesday the 21st of July 2026 at 10 a.m. Following the Council's decision to reduce the number of Vice Chairs for each committee from 2 to 1, I can confirm that John Pendleton will continue as the Council's Vice Chair to this committee. I'd like to thank Councillor Adam Griffiths for his role as Vice Chair of this committee. I'm pleased to say that he will continue as a member of this committee. I'm also proud of the fact that he will be also a Councillor and Vice Chair on the Corporate Committee as well. I pass over to Carly. Could you give any apologies for today's meeting?
Thanks, Chair. I've received apologies from Councillor John Pendleton and Councillor Rhys Machin.
Item 2, declarations. So are there any declarations of interest at the committee today? Thank you. Item 3, we'll go on to the minutes for the 25th of June 2026. I resolved that the minutes of the meeting were held on the Thursday the 25th of June to be confirmed as correct and signed by the Chair. I move for someone to move this motion. Councillor Griffiths, and second, Councillor Baker. Thank you. We'll move now to item 4. We've got a great agenda today based on highways, 4 different topics of highways. So we'll start with the Staffordshire roadmap to the better networks. We have a 4-month update from Staffordshire roadmap to the better networks. This report outlines the progress on our highway transformation programme, structure repairs and tackling low-level defects. I invite Councillor Peter Mason as a Cabinet Member for Strategic Highways to present. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an update on the roadmap to a better network. The paper being presented is here to demonstrate the progress on this roadmap. It's a comprehensive improvement programme. It receives 72 million of capital investment this year, and within that aligns 15 million of additional funding for the backlog reduction programme over the next 2 years. The programme delivery remains green, with the majority of the 2026 milestones active, either complete or on track. The programme has now transitioned from setup, which is the work we were doing running up to the end of March, into active delivery, and it's with tangible operational improvements being realised. The delivery is already underway. New depot teams have been mobilised, meaning that a more local focus and input to the repairs is being made. Additional repair crews are on the ground, working on the work stack reduction programme, and these crews are intended to be increased even further. The structures action plan has been signed off. The innovation pipeline and testing and trials of different materials commenced in early summer. Data improvement, vast shift in digital tools, which is showing improvement in operational efficiency and performance, and an ongoing programme of change designed to continue to deliver these improvements. The last thing I'll say before I hand over just for a bit more detail is that as of the 13th of July, the week beginning 13th of July, 14,582 potholes have been addressed. Thank you. So I'd like to hand over, and I've got more of a presentation to come.
Thank you. Shall we move on to the first slide? Can you hear me okay? Okay, morning everyone. So yeah, just to echo what Councillor Mason said there, this is the regular 4-month opportunity to review the progress against the Highway Improvement Plan that Cabinet approved earlier this year. Regular opportunity, I suppose, also to remind members that the roadmap to a better network is the agreed improvement and transformation activity, and to demonstrate that the progress that is already underway, share that progress, provide assurance around the governance, the performance monitoring and the risk management that's in place. So the three, just as a quick reminder, the three strategic outcomes of the roadmap to a better network is firstly to fix our roads, which is basically about involving delivering smarter, more efficient highway maintenance that's less disruptive to residents and businesses. Secondly, to save our structures, which is about improving the way we manage and invest in bridges and other critical highway infrastructure. And thirdly, to address our backlog, which is reducing that large volume of outstanding lower risk defects, which are a nuisance and a blight to communities through additional investment and some innovative delivery models. The key message for today, though, which I'm going to hand over to Katie to go through in a minute, is just that this update now on the programme is that we're fully moved now from the strategy side into the delivery phase, which Katie's now going to go through step by step. Thank you.
Thanks, James, and thanks for having me today. So I was just going to cover a couple of the things Peter and James have already gone over, but go into a little bit more detail in terms of operational impact for you all today. So, as Peter's already covered, we've got the local delivery model, which is now fully embedded, and it's a growing activity that moves and improves as it further embeds. So we've got 4 depots, so Leek, Stone, Gailey, and Lichfield. All 4 of those depots have local teams now with the right professionals in the rooms, so to speak. So we've got meetings that happen each week that factor in local priorities that are either brought in from members or community insight. That's really made a difference into how we're planning and scheduling the work. So we've got the 4 programme that we work towards, but we're also embedding into that those local priorities so that we can maintain the roads with the right maintenance programme, however, making sure we're factoring in those local insights as well into that delivery. It's also helped shift us from that general maintenance programme into a bit of a coordinated approach as well, so we're working with utilities, etc., to embed that coordination into our everyday thinking. And it's a real shift in how we've worked previously, so a real positive impact for us. With that being said, we've also got the work stack reduction programme, which has been mobilised now. Our target was April. We actually started on it just prior to April, which was a real result for us, and got extra crews deployed into the network. Those crews are continuing to onboard, so at the minute I think we've got an additional 10. Those crews will fluctuate, so in the summer period we're trying to make sure we've got as many on the ground as we can, so that we can actually really tackle that backlog in the months where we can make a big difference. So we're looking at onboarding an extra couple. We've got different technologies being tested and trialled and piloted to address that work stack as well on those pesky Category 3 potholes that everybody knows about. So real progress on that work stack project. We've also got the performance and data maturity that Councillor Mason's touched on. So we've been doing a lot of work in terms of that data maturity that we've got, making sure that we're collating all of the data we've got, looking for anomalies, gaps where we haven't addressed things, and using those trends to further evolve our approach as well. So in the design of our KPIs going forward, how can we make sure that we're really tracking and monitoring progress efficiently? So we've actually managed to do that so far. We've got dashboards, etc. And I know, Chair, there was a request for us to provide some stats going forward at the further scrutiny panels, which we're looking to build for you in terms of a dashboard. So real positive there. We've used data intelligence, Power BI. There's a lot of shift in technology, so to speak, in how we're actually collating that data. So it's been a really exciting project to be involved in as well. We've also got the innovation. So as Councillor Mason's touched on, testing of different materials, trialling and pilots in certain areas, and we're trying to embed those successful ones into BAU. So with that being said, we're developing a business case for some of the materials we've tested in terms of how we can apply that going forward into maintenance, and where the best areas for that are, how we can be most cost effective in delivery. So innovation in itself in terms of materials and how we collate all of those case studies for previous testing that's been done. The platform that we've got to monitor that has been developed as well, so we've got a much more advanced way of collating all of that data. We've got a much more advanced way of people being able to apply into our spec. So really, again, really positive movement on that and in that space. Just wanted to touch on the capital investment. I think the roadmap itself is an enormous programme, but it's be remiss of us to not mention the enormous investment that we've managed to get. £72 million, as Peter's touched on. We've got part of that being the 15 million that's been invested into that work stack project. We've got a real focus on preventative maintenance, renewals and improved schemes. With this programme, we see enhanced coordination, as I've touched on already. So the teams that deliver all of this capital are now building a platform where we can start to coordinate with each other, again, touching with the third-party utilities, etc. Where can we optimise the space on the network where we've got traffic management, thus then creating efficiencies. So that's a big piece of work, and we've actually got a member of staff onboarding early August whose primary function is coordination of those tasks. So that's a real positive one in terms of capital maintenance, but I think the big thing to mention is supporting local transport plan and Staffordshire roadmap to a better network. It's a double-pronged approach with our coordination on those two elements. We've got the 4-year programme funding settlement with 100% success rate to date in securing that enhancement incentive. So really, well, we'll hopefully get news on that. So it's looking good for us. But that provides confidence in long-term forward planning and coordination and sort of embeds further what we're already working on. And then I think we've got just a slide to cover what's next. So we want to make sure going forward that we're investing and making sure we can deliver the £72 million capital maintenance programme. We've got a lot of enablers that fall under that to make sure we can successfully deliver it. We've got the delivery of the structures action plan, and the remedial work on the key bridges. So we've delivered already and had signed off on the top 10 structures, which was requested as part of the roadmap. That's all been presented and signed off. I think we're now moving into the space to make sure we're getting the right funding and the biddings taking place to get that further funding we require. And I think on the slide it touches on the existing grade 2 listed bridge on the A513 Chetwynd Bridge. We've then got the continuation of the backlog action plan. That will be taking place until April 2028 to make sure that we're applying all of that funding and we can review the success of that project. Testing and trialling of different materials, it's just an ongoing process of that innovation pipeline. So we will continue to try new materials and methods of application. And then I think further recruitment to the roles of coordination that support all of that improvement and that ongoing improvement. So not just the roadmap, but the service-wide. We're making sure that we're trying to embed continuous improvement as a business as usual activity in terms of reviewing where we can improve and create efficiencies going forward. Just wanted to go over the recommendations one more time, really. So if we could all note the progress that's been made on the Staffordshire roadmap to a better network. Hopefully you've all seen the risks, the milestones and dependencies that were shared as part of the programme pack. I just wanted to note to everybody that with me going over the KPIs and this sort of evolution of how they've been improved, I'll be sharing for the next meeting, if that's okay, the updated KPIs that we've got along with the new stats that were requested, Chair. That's everything from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the presentation. I'll now open up to the committee to ask any relevant questions that we want to kick off with, please. Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering about with the extra investment, did we get any extra plant equipment with that investment? And then also the usage, like, are we using all of the machines all of the time? Or I think you've got it.
Yes, well, with the extra investment, we haven't used that money to invest in actual plant, but however, the way we mobilise the teams with some of the treatments, that mobilises with a plant element included in it. So like the velocity patching, for instance, comes with the equipment to ensure that you can get that tarmac in the ground. So there is an element of plant involved in that funding, but we're not buying plant with it. It's about delivery. In terms of efficiency and utilisation, that is a challenging area. About 6 weeks ago, for instance, one example is the Pothole Pros. Now, the Pothole Pros came online. One was here and one came shortly after we arrived. And they're fitted into the structure and into the teams we have. we've actually had a session, an efficiency session with JCB up at their facilities to look at actually, can we tweak how we build the teams around the use of the pothole pros? It's a different piece of machinery, and we need to recognise that actually that might bring a slightly different operational need in terms of getting the maximum efficiency out of it. So we're actually working on that now. It's something we early on recognised that the machines had come in, but we hadn't amended or reviewed the operational mechanism around them. We'd rather use them as a tool within what we'd already did. So with JCB support, who are working as a partner with us, we've been and had some discussions about what else they can do, how we might use them for planing a part of the day and then go off and do ditching or other things, other parts of the day, to make sure we maximise the return on that investment. And that's on part of the roadmap efficiency review, bringing those operational mechanisms and making them more suitable around the equipment we're now deploying. That's
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thanks for the report. A few questions to go through. One is on point 15 of the report, you talk about the mixed delivery model consultant shortlisting was completed in May and commenced work on 7th of June. So this is about the new delivery model for drainage maintenance. Can you go into detail about what this is, please? Yeah,
I certainly can. The mixed delivery model is, as you're aware, we have a term contractor. And that term contractor delivers everything through that we want delivered. The mixed delivery model challenges us to look at whether or not that's the most efficient model, and do we want to direct procure or direct deliver any elements of the services. One area we first identified for review and to have an assessment of was gully cleaning and the drainage activities. And what we're looking at there is there is a fairly fixed cyclic mechanism around drainage at the moment, which is either 1 year, 2 year or 3 year gully cleaning. And that's, a lot of that is based on the nature of the road, nature of the gullies that are involved. What we've recognised is that doesn't necessarily reflect the potential risk of some of those gullies. Some get more runoff, some get more contamination, some get more blockages. And they could probably do with greater attention, even though they sit in a different category. So this is about looking at, A, what is the risk-based approach to make sure we address the right gullies in the right time frames, and not necessarily just a pure cyclic activity. And 2, is the delivery model that just puts everything out for that gully cleaning subcontracted through the term contract to the I+ contract, the right delivery model, or do we want to make it more locally focused, i.e. contracted and delivered out through the depots? So that's what that review is about, and that's what the mixed delivery model is looking at. So it's about finding the right balance across the delivery network of how we deliver those services.
Okay, that's good news, because I understand the risk approach of some drains, because say I've got 5 quarries in my area, and those drains around those quarries are quite badly maintained because of the silt that comes from the quarries, and you can't do much when it's on a cyclical basis. So that's good news. When is that review going to be done? It's already been done, right? Or the drainage review?
We're expecting the output in September. Yeah, so it's up and running, but it's the first asset area we're looking at, and we identified gully cleaning and drainage as one that we could relatively quickly look at, mobilise and change the practices of. It won't be the last. I say that the whole mixed economy model is about reviewing how we deliver all the services and finding the most efficient way and the best way of doing it.
Thanks for that. Another question now is on these new local depot operational teams. So they've just started in May, correct? Is there any, are there KPIs on their performance, so like what they're doing differently compared to before? Because I assume they're coordinating locally about local issues. I just wondered, like, can we see what they're doing in their performance?
Well, the performance is mixed in with the overall performance because they're not doing separate activities. What they're doing is ensuring that local knowledge, that local prioritisation is fed into the development of the forward work schedules, how we go about tackling those defects. Maybe if we've got a choice, you know, we are always going to have limited funds. If you've a choice of 2 areas you go into, local knowledge can help that decision as to which one of them gets priority. So they don't have their own specific KPI at this stage because it's still all going through the current mechanism. If we start to deliver services directly out of the depots, then obviously we might split KPIs out to support that. But the key to them at the moment is that they're bringing that knowledge, that local knowledge and that local priorities into the planning of all the works. So it's ensuring that those local issues are getting focus when we're making those decisions about the wider programme of activities.
Okay, last question, Chair. Just on the backlog of potholes now, I know it's been increasing over the years to, I think, 16,000 Cat 3s, you said in the report here. Is it declining now, or, you know, where's it going? Is it still climbing up, or?
Right. In terms of overall backlog, there's about 31,000 defects, of which about half or so, 16,000, 17,000, are what you would term pothole type defects. Yes, it has been climbing, and yes, it is now just starting to nudge down in terms of the numbers. However, you've got to remember we're still in a period of, we came out of a winter and this is the first quarter, so it was still climbing as we came into April, and we've had to fix those winter defects and now start on the programme of declining. So it's very early days after quarter one, but the signs are good. The number of potholes we're filling in terms of that backlog, it is where we would want it to be, and probably a bit higher than I expected it to be fair, which is good, but we won't take the pressure off. So I think as this year goes on, you will see that 16,000, 17,000 numbers start to decrease, and it should decrease significantly. Remember, it is a 2-year programme though, so don't expect by next March that it's disappeared its entirety.
Yeah, I'm not expecting it to be all fixed by next March.
The reality is, you will always be trying to play a little level of catch-up. It's where you set that and what that base level is. It isn't 17,000, is it 2,000, is it 3,000?
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Baker. Councillor Tagg, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Welcome the report, and I think it recognises the challenges facing Staffordshire's roads. I think we know across the country issues with potholes are the same wherever you go. I think, you know, I would say, and I think the opposition would say, there's been a lot of knee-jerk reactions over the last 14 months, so it's good to see a plan being put down. But of course, what people want to see out in our residents want to see is that backlog reduced, improved repairs, and obviously that vital infrastructure protected, which of course this report covers that vital infrastructure such as bridges, so that's welcome. I think we've got a roadmap, we've got strategies, we've got government structures, we've got boards, etc. But as I say, what we want to see is those defects repaired, particularly those ones before they become a bigger, more expensive problem, isn't it, in getting that backlog down. So a couple of questions really about the backlog. Obviously the council's investing 15 million over 2 years, as you've said. And we just talked about the previous question about what level backlog would be seen as an improvement. So I don't see any of that in the targets. Have I missed it? You know, the backlog by March 2028, would the portfolio to give us an idea of what he thinks would be a sustainable backlog at that point? And what is your targets over the next couple of years during this plan? And then to follow on from that as well, obviously the report talks about the shift from reactive to proactive, which I think is something that, through the surface dressing, which has been a successful, ramp that up and you get less potholes out the other end over a number of years if you can protect those services. So what percentage of the budget is currently spent on that preventative maintenance compared with those reactive repairs? And what's the target for that over the next couple of years? Because you would imagine you'd want to see more on the preventative and less on the reactive as your policy begins to bear fruits.
Yes, yeah, I agree with all that. The answer is, the first one, the answer is we're targeting 16,000 backlog pothole repairs out of the existing list. Now, does that leave 1,000 or 2,000, or do you add a few more? Because obviously we've still got a degrading network. We still will have potholes occurring that reactively through those winter months. So there will be a bit of topping up. We have to recognise that as well. But the target is 16,000 repairs for that additional investment, taking them off that backlog stack. In terms of, sorry, the second part of the question was, oh yes, the percentage. I haven't got the percentages to hand. I can provide them. But you're right. The intention is that we will move to a position where we can be more proactive with things like the preventative dressings and less reactive, particularly coming out of winter with repairing potholes that have occurred due to the winter season, which is always going to be a challenge. Make no mistake, as good as your roads are, you're going to get potholes through that winter season, and that will be true however much progress you make. But yes, you're right. If we can get the backlog reduction down, we remove those vulnerabilities, and this is why the backlog programme has been developed, to remove the vulnerabilities that sit there going into winter, create those more serious defects that then you have to react to. And the more defects you get between that sort of December, January, February, March period, the longer into your usable, proactive maintenance period, you're actually being reactive, trying to play catch up. So if we can get that down, that frees up the space, the resources, the time and the revenue to increase the proactive maintenance. I can't say here what the number will be by 2028, but what I can say is we will be showing those numbers, we will be measuring those numbers, and we will be stating, giving a result as to what we've achieved year on year in terms of that proactive change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why we're looking forward to that dashboard, the KPIs, to come to this committee. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you for the answer. But I think when you bring that forward, I think obviously what I would like to see, and hopefully the committee would agree with me, is that target around backlog reduction. Of course, as we know, we've had a really nice period of weather now. We're going to pay for this in the autumn, aren't we, with our the sort of the wet autumns which we've had over a number of years. I think we're going to actually get that in spades. Is that probably not the right word? In hoses and watering cans and hoses. We're going to really be hit, I think, in the autumn. That's going to affect your teams going out and repairing. So, but I think I would go back to the fact that I think we need a target year on backlog, so we can, as a scrutiny committee and the public, can obviously then judge the success of this roadmap, isn't it? And just one further question. Obviously, we see failures in pothole repairs. We also see the temporary repairs with the big Ts, the legendary big Ts. But on that failure, is there any figures to show what repairs have failed when we've had to go out again and put another T on or do a permanent repair? And will we going forward have, Chair, a sort of a target around right first time rather than continually going back, or even worse, a temporary repair that fails that then never gets repaired again for many, many months, which again is really frustrating for the public?
No, I agree, it is. And one of the things early on was that actually there didn't seem to be a measure of those temporary repairs and failed repairs. And we have changed that, and we are now able to provide a measure of them. In terms of temporary repairs, the roadmap actually seeks to move away as much as possible from using temporary repairs. It won't be zero, because we're going to have to react. If you've got a safety repair, if you've got an emergency repair, you've got 2 hours, you're going to go and put some tarmac in that hole. And organising a full repair in 2 hours just in this environment just isn't really realistic. So we have to acknowledge the art of the possible. But we are looking, and part of the innovation is looking at how through the winter months, where it can be particularly reactive with temporary repairs, we can either make temporary repairs and seal them, turn them into semi-permanent repairs or permanent repairs, or actually go with a non-cut and break repair method that is a permanent repair. And we're putting a lot of work into that now, with a view that come the winter, each depot potentially can mobilise a reactive team that will be doing that, and that will reduce very much the number of temporary repairs. That's the aim of looking at this innovation, and will allow us to make permanent repairs, or first one visit repairs that endure and go back into a proactive cycle, so they can be protectively dressed at a future point. But we will, I think this number's due to come out shortly actually on this. which I will publish. So we will be looking at the number of temporary repairs that have gone in, the number that have failed, and the number that have been revisited.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Any other questions? Councillor Bentley.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. And a couple of things, really, is I had an email this week that there was a little job we wanted doing and they were waiting for a digger to become available, a plant machinery, which is coming on from. Do we, as a council, hire equipment in when it's necessary? So not through a contract, but do our teams... I'm just thinking, there's loads of hire firms now with mini diggers, this, that and the other. They even deliver them to site, don't they? Is that something that would maybe help us in the future, save us waiting for plant? And just the other one on the temporary repairs. Once we've got a list of where we've temporarily repaired, I'm just thinking in my own little town, there's a few with the T's on that, like you say, are probably going to wear out, and they certainly won't last the winter. Once we've got a list of where they are in a local area, would it be, I know it's difficult, do a night shift, if you like, and go around and do them when the roads are a bit quiet? I mean, we've just had a brilliant infrastructure done where I am, and they've done it overnight, and, you know, they really got on with it because there was no traffic. So is that something we can think, you know, we've got all these T's, does a team want to go out at night time? I know it's health and safety, but it was just an idea, I just thought I'd put it out there. Thank you.
Well, to answer that, generally all our plant and machinery comes through our I+ route, because that's the way we do our delivery, and that's part of the contractual terms and arrangements. So they plan everything, they bring the machines in as necessary, whether it's their own, whether they hire them in. In terms of the issue around sort of night working, we do night working, but it's not necessarily core standard practice. And there's a number of reasons for that. These environmental rules, we can't just go out and work at night. We have to get permission to do it, and you have to get permission for the type of work you're going to do, and you have to do it on an individual night and an individual project activity. It is something as part of my early campaign to try and get some legislative changes I raised, where I think if we're trusted to fix a road, we should be trusted to fix the roads and not be a nuisance. It's not a big leap. So that is something that I'm looking at to see whether or not it can be changed. And in fact, I don't want to mention LGR, but when it's under one council, it might be easier to get those changes to do things like that. It does come with a cost as well. There can be night premiums and that. So where it is appropriate, where we can deploy it, where it will be very disruptive to work through the days, we are doing. For instance, Derby Road resurfacing will be done all at night in Burton, because it would be too disruptive and too difficult to do it throughout the days. And we did some other work there at night. But in some residential areas, that's really not quite so appropriate. So it is horses for courses. It does need actually additional permissions to undertake it as well. So it isn't just a case of saying it would be better if we did it at night.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you. And just one more. My team comes out of the Leak Depot, and the Leak Depot is one of the depots where they do the gritting and the winter works. And I noticed last winter when I was asking for anything, if it was a knee-jerk problem I got, we were struggling for staff because they'd either been out all night on gritting wagons and stuff like that. So I was just wondering what will be in place this year with the extra teams. Will that alleviate some of them problems? Because we seem to have the same contractors. I say if they're driving a gritting wagon, they can't be repairing a pothole sort of thing, can they? Thank you.
That is the case. We don't have gritting teams sat there. We do deploy them onto the priorities of that week and that day. And winter maintenance, obviously, if you're having frost and snow, is the priority. And if you're having heavy, really cold weather, as frost, snow, then pothole fixing becomes a bit of a difficulty anyway. So in terms of the additional teams, they are targeting through the good period. Will they roll on into the winter? That will depend on our progress with some of the innovations and whether or not we can carry on deploying a high level of real permanent pothole fixes through the colder months, and that's something we're looking at. It also depends on how quickly and how much progress we make and how quickly we deplete the funding, of course, because there's a finite amount of money as well to pay for it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for the councillors' questions and your answers. I think to wrap up this part, obviously it's great to see the improvements on fixing roads, saving structures and the backlog defects. The fact that we've got £72 million worth of, I would say, a budget to go and get into the defects. And the fact that we've gone from 31,000 to 16,000 defects is great. And it's also pleasing to see that we're hitting the ground with over 5,000 repairs in June. Just in terms of recommendations from the committee, I know you've gone through the recommendations already for the roadmap and also the dependencies around delivery of programme. I think Councillor Tagg, you recommended two reactive versus proactive targets and also right first time, I believe. So just asking the committee, do we agree that those should be added to the KPIs of interest? Yeah, okay. And can we possibly facilitate that on the KPIs?
Yeah, we'll take that away and look to facilitate it. We've just done a quick run through the numbers, and we can actually say it's 57% of the budget is on preventative.
Sorry, 57%?
57% preventative maintenance.
Okay, thank you for that. Thanks, Peter. Thank you.
But yes, we will take them away and look to incorporate them.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, we've got the capital maintenance programme delivery status. We've got the percentage of age of high-risk defects completed within the target time scale. We've got a total number of potholes completed against the target, and we've got the number of Cat 3s, low-risk potholes, jobs removed from the backlog, and progress, I think, around the members' DHP priorities delivered against the target. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just with what you're just saying, Chair, I was just wondering how the 72 million is broken down into the maintenance and other areas, please.
Yeah, it is in the March Cabinet report, the breakdown of how the 72 is made up. We can also bring that out and send it out to you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mason.
I just haven't got it in front of me.
I think in terms of time as well, we're out of time for this topic. But moving on now to item 5, which is the Highways Design Code. This is a revised framework, established clear, consistent countrywide approach to support planning authorities and update new street designs and adaptation processes. I hand over to Councillor Mason to present the key details, and I'll open it to the committee for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm having a swap. That's good. I will just do the introduction. I mean, I think this design code is actually long overdue. I think it was design code was last published around year 2000, was it? So 26 years ago. I think a number of changes, national changes and guidelines came in around mid-2007, 2008 that meant some appendices of that code were still in use, but parts of that code dropped away, and it's been more experience and understanding led. This aims at bringing that together in a far more structured way, providing a code which will be particularly useful for those developers so they know what information they need to give us and what is and isn't sort of a Staffordshire expectation, if you like. It's based on national planning policy framework. It's based on the local transport notes and the National Design Guide. The one thing I will say, the one thing I do like in this that's been brought in, it also takes account of Staffordshire's communities and geography. And that's to say, if you look at things like planting schemes, it's been made relevant to the area. So the kind of planting perhaps for North Staffordshire is different to the kind of planting we might expect in South Staffordshire, to try and create an environment that's complementary to the communities and the environment that already exists. I think that's a small thing, but a very, very significant thing in terms of our aim of enhancing Staffordshire and keeping its character and keeping its culture the way it is to those communities. But on that, have you got a presentation or no, right? You're just going to talk through. I'd like to hand over so that you can have a bit more detail on that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mason. Thank you, Chair. So as Councillor Mason has set out, this design code is potentially long overdue. It replaces the previously adopted residential design guide, which was a main body document supplemented by a series of technical appendices. And as Councillor Mason mentioned, the main body of that document was rendered obsolete by the production nationally of a manual for streets, which changed the way in which street design was looked at in 2007. So the technical appendices which supported that document were still relevant, such as the highway base specification, and those continued to be reviewed and updated as time progressed. But the actual main body of the document was never updated, and our design engineers were referring to manual for streets and other national guidance in assessing proposals from residential house builders. So just to be clear, that the street design code is a document that is aimed at house builders. It is for new residential streets that will be later adopted as public highway. It's not for the existing highway network. So the main purpose of the code, as I said, it's guidance to house builders, and its purpose is to secure that we have well-designed streets and public spaces, to ensure that there is clarity and consistency throughout each stage of the process, from planning through to the technical design check, construction and later adoption. We're looking to provide minimum requirements as opposed to maximum aspirations for new development. And we want to ensure that in delivering new streets, there is a key feature on enabling long-term stewardship, maintainability of the street and climate resilience in the design. So in doing that, the design code takes its sort of street keys from the National Design Guide and the National Model Design Code. So it follows a similar sort of theme in that it's a rules-based document that sets out the key expectations that we require developers to consider when they're looking at the construction of new streets. And if you look at the document, it's set into various different themes, with key themes around place, movement, access, safety and servicing, utilities, and lifespan. So that's the sort of the general process which has gone through. So it moves away from previous design guides, our own design guide and national design guide, that sets prescriptive requirements for different types of streets needing to be a certain width and have certain features. This is a more intuitive approach. It allows designers to respond to the local vernacular of the area, as Councillor Mason mentioned, and to design places that don't look like somewhere 10 miles down the street, to create some sense of differentiation between these different housing developments. I think everyone's seen the sort of the volume house builders trotting out the same sort of developments in one part of the country as opposed to the other, and you never know if you sort of photograph where you were in the country. So this aims to try and take the street element of that out and create some locally specific designs that are relevant to Staffordshire and encapsulates the needs of all the different road users. So we've done it this way in terms of just looking at streets, because we are the highway authority, but nationally there was a push from government sort of coming off the back of that Anywhereville UK type developments that the house builders were trotting out. Was for all local planning authorities to produce their own local design guides and design codes in accordance with the national models. So faced with that question, we asked the districts and borough councils, well, where do you see yourselves being in relation to your production of your own design codes? Because streets will feature highly in what their codes will look at. So we agreed collectively with them, rather than doing it 8 times over, we'd do a single street design document applicable to the whole of Staffordshire, and within their own codes they could signpost to this document or extract elements from it and include it within their own. So that, I think, covers the general sort of overview in a little bit more detail. So I'll open the floor to questions now, Chair. Thank you.
I've just got a question around adoption in terms of like timeline and scale for the amount of years that we adopt. Is there a kind of threshold for that? You know, if it goes over 10 years for a development to be adopted, is there a certain target that we need to meet?
Thank you, Chair. There isn't a target timescale as such. It's very much in the hands of the developer. I think really the onus is when a when somebody buys a property, purchases a new home, they buy that property with their conveyancer's support and in the knowledge that those roads are intended to be publicly adopted and publicly maintained going forward, and that's part of their condition of their purchase. So their duty really sits on them to be able to push that housing developer to hold them to account for that purpose, if you like, to do the necessary works that the County Council, then as the Highway Authority, can sign off those works as suitably, as acceptable to be brought into the public maintenance responsibilities.
Just to be a bit more specific then, and not to put you on the spot, but where is in terms of the minimums of road width, what would that be for adoption on a highway? And if you don't know the answer, I'd like to know. And if that is the case, does this new obviously design code kind of include that?
As I said previously, Chair, it's not overly prescriptive in terms of the requirements, but there are a series of technical appendices at the end of the code which do set out some minimum requirements for certain types of roads and footway. But what we've got with national guidance and local transport note 120 and other pieces of infrastructure guidance is there's a competing need now for the highway corridor in terms of space for vehicles, space for pedestrians, space for cyclists, space for street trees in accordance with the National Planning Policy Framework. So all these competing needs need to be sort of considered in the round by the engineer at the time and work out what is best for that particular locality based on the size of the development, the volumes of traffic, the streets it's connecting onto, and so on and so forth. So as I say, it doesn't give you a black and white answer that you've got a street serving 50 houses, it needs to be X metres wide with a footway of X metres, and that's it, as previous documents did. It allows a little bit more scope for the application of professional expertise in the design based on the rules that are set out in the code itself.
Yeah, just to add to the committee for context, obviously for a proposal of design and obviously proposals coming out of certain developments at the minute, they're quoting kind of width of roads needing to be a certain specification. But, you know, for me, that's about learning about the proposal, about the developments, and then kind of making sure that's within the design code to answer those. So it's just one that I wanted to highlight. Councillor Tagg.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think the question people will be asking when they see a new design code is what sort of teeth does it have to actually make an effect? Will our county council, highways officers and other consultees, when the county council is a consultee, be actually recommending to planning committees, or at least through their consultation as a statutory consultation, enforcing almost this design code? Because for me, I see a lot of planning developments that go through for housing estates where there isn't wide enough roads, where bin trucks can't get round to collect the bins. There's no sort of space outside properties for that. And it comes down to the planning committee members, the district planning committee members, to then say, this doesn't work. Can we put in a recommendation that there's enough changes to this to help with those sort of things? And it doesn't just mean bin trucks, does it? It means if visitors come to properties, they're blocking roads, blocking entrances, etc. So we do then have look at the highways advice, and it doesn't really cover any of that in the planning application. So my question is, does it have teeth? Will our highways officers, who are obviously giving a view on a planning application for a housing development, be putting this into practice in their recommendations and conditions which they'd like to see attached to planning applications? If they don't, it's just a meaningless document, isn't it?
Thank you, Councillor Taggart. Chair, yes, the document is, as I say, it's designed for the audience being house builders, but also our own engineers, and it will have teeth in the, as Councillor Tagg suggests. So the document will be a guide to developers, and our own engineers as well will be using it throughout the process to assess the proposals that are put to them for review by the house builders. So as part of the production of this code, We had Phil Jones Associates commissioned to come in and help with the assistance in terms of producing the code, but also in reviewing our own existing processes and procedures. So there are changes to the way we go about assessing street design embedded into the code. In particular, we now have a deliverability check set in before the planning permission is granted, so that the engineers who are responsible for doing the detailed technical design check around the materials that are used, the depth of the foundation for the road, where the gullies go, etc., they're brought in earlier in the piece than they are presently to review the proposals and can give a confirmation that, in principle, yes, this scheme is actually deliverable. If it isn't, it should then go back to the developers to say, well, there are issues with this scheme, you need to change the plans, and picking up the sort of issues that Councillor Tagg has raised. But there are also a number of changes in the code in terms of the principles that also address some of the issues that have been flagged to us from the district councils around refuse collection, proliferation of cul-de-sacs, which the code looks to try and address those issues by reducing the number of cul-de-sacs that are allowed and trying to create better penetration through sites, so there's more accessibility for all modes of travel and a choice of transport for the residents of that estate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you. My question is, do you foresee that LGR will affect the highways design code, and will it have to be redesigned, as it were, in 2 years' time when we have a new unitary authority? Thank you.
The simple answer is no, we don't think it will, because this is a locally developed design code. I can't say what each new council's administration will seek to do with it, but there's no reason that LGR in itself would change this. It will be as relevant in the new structure as it is in the current structure.
Councillor Baker.
Thank you for that.
Councillor Baker, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Councillor Pendleton.
Thanks for the report. I was going to quote the deliverability check, because that's the biggest part, I think, about this report. About before the district accept the plans to go ahead, you check, I don't know, the street width, the size of the verge, all the things in this report here. So is there a lot of work that goes into that? Because I assume right now we look afterwards, after the plan is past planning, then you start looking at, okay, is that size of the road correct, the trees, all these different aspects. Is there going to be much more work to do now because you're doing it pre-district accepting of planning? That's my first question.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The simple answer is no. There isn't going to be any extra work. It's just the work that is being done is being stretched out over a longer period. So the design engineers who do the technical checking elements are being brought in to have an early look at the plans before they go forward. So assuming that they are acceptable, then there is no extra work for that particular project. If there are problems, then obviously that proposal needs to go back to the developer for changes, so there will be an element of extra work there. But that would have happened anyway in the previous system, but it would have been picked up post-planning consent, schemes change, and developments delivered and being built on the ground that look different to the plans that were approved by the planning authorities. And this was one of the issues that was presented to us when we undertook a review with the planning authorities, that they were expecting certain things to come forward. The normal example that they gave was, well, we thought this area would be block paved or a different colour. It's tarmac now. Why is that the case? So it's those sorts of issues that will be picked up with the deliverability check, and picking up things like the location of street trees and lamp columns, so that you don't need to have extra lamp columns to light the street because someone's decided to put a tree underneath where the lighting column needs to go. So those sorts of issues will be collected and picked up.
Thanks for that. Then my second question is, can residents raise their concerns about if it doesn't meet the aspects of this report? Because I know engineers look at, you know, the size of the roads, all the different things you brought up here. Are residents like, oh, this new plan of the development doesn't suit this? Is it possible for them to raise it to you, or is it not possible?
In theory, it will, because we're doing the work on the front end and it's going into planning. The reality is, when you get into detail, there are potentially unknowns and things that might require compromise. And if that compromise is required, it will be done for the best overall solution for that development. So it might be that you finish up tweaking it so it doesn't quite fit exactly the examples given or how it's written, but it will be the best possible outcome in those circumstances. And I think it's a quite difficult thing to say it'll be 100% compliant. It'll start off with that aim, but you have to, again, it goes back to the art of the possible and the practicalities of actually delivering when you get into that detailed design and start to discover things that potentially what you weren't aware of at that early stage. So we can't guarantee it'll be 100%, but it'll be pretty close.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Councillor Griffith.
Thank you, Chair. Paul kind of stole my question, but I still want to comment on this. What I found really useful is the pictures with a tick and the pictures with an X, because when you look at it, it all comes as this is common sense, but you would have never thought about it before, about how a street can look cluttered because of a load of signs, which become a liability for us because it's a sign, so it's our property. So more of a statement to invite you to bring more comments on, but I was very impressed with this report.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the... Just, I think you touched on it at the beginning. This is obviously the new system. What about the niggly ones that we've inherited that haven't been adopted? I've got a couple in my area. And they are causing me issues like, nobody's repairing the lights because it's not adopted highway. We won't put a footpath next to it. We can't do it because it's not the adopted highway. So I've got a few of them. So I don't know what you're going to do with that backlog. Are we going to, and the developers, this was like the late 80s development, so I'm not sure if the developer's still around or he's definitely passed. I've seen it on companies' house, it's moved around a few times. So I don't know what the answer is for that. And the other one is, obviously we have these big developments. We have this what's called 106 money, don't we, where we pay for a bit of green open space or whatever. Are we tagging into this for future maintenance? Because it's all right adopting something with a lovely bench and a lovely tree and a lovely this. But what's our maintenance side here? Because we don't seem to have a maintenance team that are doing any of this maintenance. And that's when it starts becoming a little bit unloved, because a lot of these pictures look brilliant, but they do need maintenance, don't they? So I was just wondering how that fits in when we adopt. Thank you.
Well, I'll work backwards, I think, on that. I mean, we do have teams that do these maintenance. We have a number of maintenance visits for grass cutting and tree maintenance and weeding and spraying and all those things. And there is a regime on that. Like everything else, the number of visits, the regime around it is a product of our available funds, the scale of our network, the number of resources we can deploy. And that will be true and the same for anything we adopt compared to anything that we currently have within our maintenance. In terms of adoption, for me, this is a simple thing. We don't have statutory powers to force them to hand it over. What we do, however, need is a couple of things. One is that anything under that surface, which once it gets broken becomes our problem if we've adopted it, is up to standard. So utilities have been adopted by the appropriate utility companies and they're up to standard and can be maintained and are appropriate. And there's no remedial works needed prior to us adopting it. And that the construction is up to standard and adoptable. Now, there is a number of quite a backlog of roads that have gone on some time, and we don't do nothing. We do try and encourage that they be brought forward, that they complete their necessaries, including legals, for instance. We need them to be shown that there's no third-party incumbency on land we're adopting that might then bring a liability to the taxpayer through ourselves. So we have to make sure these things are met before we adopt. What we need is the developers to bring that forward in a timely manner, but we don't have powers to push them. It also should be noted that some developers choose not to because they want to maintain and have maintenance charges and things within that estate. And where they're not adopted, it is still on incumbent on the developer to maintain them, to make sure they're addressed, to make sure any defects are repaired, so they don't lose that liability just by building the last house. And of course, they also like to keep some of the green spaces, and we never adopt some of them on a number of these new housing developments.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Last question from Councillor Tagg, please.
Thank you, Chair. It makes reference to the blue infrastructure, doesn't it, and the SUDs, which are the sustainable drainage systems. It's just a question about, we have a lot of planning application. I can name one, which is the former county-owned site in Hoon Avenue, which was sold recently for a development of 88 houses, which has got permission on appeal. Main concern there is that flood risk from the Lyme Brook runs through there as it gets meanders then through town. So the SUDs are mentioned in this. Just a question to officers, did the legislation go through that made the County Council responsibility for ensuring that the SUDs were implemented and managed and adopted? Because of course, as the planning local flood authority can recommend a SUD, but can we now ensure that those are implemented? Because a lot of the time, obviously you have planning applications, and then later years down the line, the SUDs, just like the adoption of the highways that have been mentioned, doesn't happen or doesn't happen as planned. And I notice in the community impact assessment, the risk relating to blue infrastructure is highway SUDs are still not commonplace. They need to be. And does this design guide give us more teeth to be able to ensure that A, they're in the application, and two, that they are then implemented and adopted and enforced over a long period to ensure flooding doesn't affect housing developments?
In reverse order, I'm looking to James, and sorry to put James on the spot. I don't know if the back end of that question, whether there is anything in the, I can't remember off the top of my head, whether there is anything in there to kind of promote more use of SUDs in this actual guidance.
No, so I think we need to remember that this code is related to streets. So it splits out the sustainable drainage systems from the drainage for the site itself, which is part of our lead local flood authority remit. The code itself is looking at sustainable drainage for the highway itself. So as opposed to a gully and pipe system, it's looking at asking developers to consider whether or not a SUDS drainage approach would be more appropriate in that locality in terms of its application to address weather conditions, the type of the ground typology for where the development is situated, and the other competing constraints with the road space, and also whether or not it would then be cheaper to maintain a SUDS highway drainage system as opposed to a piped and gully approach. So it starts a conversation with the developer to say, don't just immediately go to a pipe and a grid. We want you to consider SUDS, and I think as we evolve and this code sort of takes hold, we then may start looking towards, well, can we think about the bigger picture around how the drainage for the whole site and the highway drainage work collectively together if they are designed in a SUD system. At the minute, there's separate. You've got the surface water that comes off people's roofs and down the drain pipe that goes into a different place to the highway surface water. So it's there is a conversation that will need to be had at some point about all the benefits and trying to combine that water somewhere rather than having it two separate, disparate approaches. So, thank you.
And then I'll just come back on the forced adoption. That piece of legislation, I think it's Schedule 3 of the Flood Risk Management Act, isn't quite fully enacted yet, so it's still a requirement to what you may know to the District Council roles as well. So it's the developers still do currently have a right to connect to positive water outfalls, drainage systems. They don't have to do the SUD yet. We're still waiting for that legislation.
Great, thanks James for those comments and questions from the councillors. Just to wrap up Highways Design Code, I recommend that the committee review and comment Staffordshire's Highways Design Code, which provides house builders with a guidance on Staffordshire requirements and process in relation to the design, construction, adoption for the new residential streets. Could I get someone to move this motion, please? Yeah, Councillor Griffiths, second. Jones. And just to clear up the agenda point, I think we were all nodding on item 4, which was the roadmap. I just wanted a first person to move the motion on the previous item, please. Councillor Baker, and second, Jones. Thank you. Excellent. So we'll move on to item 6. Just coming to 1104 now. Sorry, Councillor Griffiths. Yeah, no worries. So moving on to item 6, Highways Infrastructure Asset Management Policy and Strategy. This item covers the refresh of the Highways Infrastructure Asset Management Policy and Strategy. This refreshes the 7-year framework to better reflect the current council priorities, customer expectations and the long-term investment decisions. Again, over to Councillor Mason. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm pleased to introduce the draft Highways Asset Management Policy and Highways Asset Management Strategy, 2 documents that form the key part of the Staffordshire County Council's Asset Management Framework. The current policy and strategy are 7 years old and no longer fully reflect the Council's priorities. Don't reflect the current funding environment, changing customer expectations, or the growing challenges facing our highways network. And that also includes the need to improve resilience to severe weather events and adaptability and those other sort of emerging risks around that. This refresh provides an important opportunity to align our asset management approach with the Council's Highway Strategic Direction for 26-28 and the Highways Roadmap that we previously discussed. So it ensures our investment decisions and service delivery arrangements support the wider corporate priorities. It also supports the Department for Transport's incentive fund and transparent reporting requirements. Staffordshire will receive 40.7 million in highways maintenance funding in 26-27, of which 10.8 million is contingent on demonstrating effective asset management practices. The review of the asset management policy and strategy was already underway, but we've accelerated this following the publication of the DFT's incentive funding requirements in June, which included the need for an up-to-date highway asset management policy and strategy or a clear plan for the review of the existing policy. The policy sets out the Council's overarching asset management principles and links them to strategic direction and highways roadmap. The strategy explains how these principles will be applied, outlining how highway assets will be managed, prioritised and delivered to achieve the outcomes. Importantly, the strategy clearly sets out our commitments, explaining what we will do, how we will do it and how success will be measured. And it's been developed in line with recognised national best practice. So really it's over to Matthew to explain this to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. So, yes, Staffordshire's highway network, 6,200 kilometres in length, and I make no apology for always restating how large and complex that sort of highway infrastructure is. And it comprises a broad and diverse range of assets across that 6,200 kilometres. The principles set out in the policy and strategy encompass all of those and apply them equally to each asset group. So we start to embed a very consistent approach to a management of our highway assets. The policy and strategy has been written in the context of the challenges we have at the moment around ageing infrastructure, funding pressures and rising public expectations. And what it starts to set out is that effective highway asset management approach, which is essential to maintain a safe and reliable highway network and making it as resilient as possible with the funding that we have available. And what asset management effectively does, it provides a systematic evidence-based approach to managing our highway assets throughout their life cycle. So we start to balance the cost and the performance and the risk of managing each highway asset group. And this is both maintenance strategy and the investment we put into each highway asset group. And the approach provides the framework for investment decisions. So we start to target investment with data and evidence in the location where we get greatest value. And it lends itself to some of the earlier conversations we had, for example, around preventative maintenance. So it's understanding what the correct balance of preventative maintenance is and actually the application of it at the optimal time. So So as Councillor Mason alluded to, the previous or the current asset management policy and strategy, they were approved in 2018 and 19, so 7 and 8 years old now. They don't align with the current strategic direction. There are emerging priorities that it doesn't recognise, and the current DFT requirements around transparency and incentive funding is not recognised through the dates that they were formally approved at that time. It supports the strategic direction 26-28 and the highway roadmap, and it keeps reinstating, as I will through this presentation, the need for a risk evidence-based led to how we sort of maintain our highway assets to get the greatest level of value. The updates have been aligned with well-managed highway infrastructure code of practice. That's the national key guidance document, almost the Bible of highway management that we sort of try and adhere to. And importantly, as Councillor Mason alluded to, that £10.8 million that's at risk in terms of providing evidence that we're embedding good asset management and sound asset management principles. This policy and strategy sought to put that framework in place, but also meet the criteria that the DFT have put forward to us around when these documents should be produced and reviewed. So the asset management policy is intended to be sort of a concise document, sets out the very high-level principles, priorities and desired outcomes. It starts to bring those priorities we set out in the strategic direction 26-28 and starts to try and make them tangible in the highway infrastructure management. The asset management strategy then starts to set out how we can do this with asset management principles around life cycle planning, forward projections of condition, forward programmes in terms of their longevity and the coordination. And delivery of those is supported then by the Highway Infrastructure Asset Management Plan, which was approved in 2022. 200 plus page document, but really goes into the detail then of how you sort of translate those principles into actual operational decisions on the network. And it's intended, the high AMP, as we call it, is brought before committee and put through the governance process sometime early to mid next year, following on the approval of the policy and strategy, which sets that framework out for us. So, in essence, we have no option but to review the asset management policy and strategy. The timeline for this review, as Councillor Mason alluded to, has been dictated to by the DFT and the requirements of the DFT Incentive Fund, which were only released to the authority in June this year. So we really have had to sort of get a step in speed to get these documents into the process to be reviewed. An adoption of the document effectively starts to set out the foundation for the strategic management of Staffordshire's highway assets. And that's all I have. Thank you, Chair. So welcome comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Matt. I'll hand over to the committee for any questions, please. Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you for the report. I read this report, and there's a few things that are concerning for me. Is paragraphs 9, the cost of implementing, paragraphs 12 and 13, as example, road conditions and defects, and mine is the other one is the implementation table. Is there any time frames on those? Could you give me any update with those, please? Thank you.
So if you could jump back into those paragraph numbers for me, please, and then I can.
Paragraphs 9, there's a cost of implementation. Paragraphs 12 and 13, there's the road conditions, defect response, and paragraphs 3 and 12, there's no implementation table. Thank you.
Thinking on that one, is it worth, because the amount of detail there and different reference points, is it okay, Matt, that you email Councillor Jones on those points, please?
Yeah, absolutely, that's fine.
Yeah, thank you. And we can circulate that for the rest of the committee. Thank you. Councillor Griffiths.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was more innovation, really. I'm just interested to know what we're being able to do to improve our delivery with using innovation. But you've kind of already went over that in the first part, but if you could go over it again, please.
So innovation in the context of the asset management and asset management policy and strategy in terms of principles are things we're doing in the back end in terms of using artificial intelligence on our network to collect condition. So we have a better understanding now of our road network, how quickly areas are deteriorating. And we're investing in specialised software that we're in the process of configuring and calibrating at the moment, which takes that information and all that road condition and all the other value management criteria that we have in terms of defects, inquiries, claims, local knowledge, public satisfaction survey data, consumes that into a platform then that we can configure and run all the different projections. So we can start to understand what the impact is of increasing investment, for example, in preventative maintenance, what that would have on the profile of the number of defects we have on the network and the type of defects we consume. So it's very much about understanding the network rather than what's the transformation programme, the work stack reduction programme is around sort of the operational delivery. So yeah, this is around knowledge, information and communication in essence in terms of innovation.
That's very interesting. It explains a lot actually, what you're actually talking about. So this is the AI car that goes around scanning the network. Is there any way that that's going to be able to do more runs? Because I'm under the impression that like a road will get scanned and then it's literally a year later before it gets scanned again. Is that correct? Or?
Well, in terms of innovation and use of AI, we're looking at all options and all sort of systems that might be available to us. As part of the innovation pipeline, they'll be assessed to see what they bring and what improvements they might create in terms of the way we actually understand and manage the asset. The one thing that sits across all of this, across this as an asset management policy and strategy, across the roadmap, is that we're treating the highways, we're looking at what's the best outcome for highways as an asset, as a transport asset. So things like bringing the whole roads approach into it. And where do we best target that investment to get the best return? And what asset types, or subsystems if you like, do we target in those areas in order to create those outcomes? So it is a slightly different approach, which is a very different approach in that what we're saying is that we're custodians of a transport asset, and how we then manage that transport asset breaks down into its different sort of constituent parts, different types of equipment, the highway, the pavements, the drainage, all those things. But you have to look at it as a whole to get the best outcomes. And the aim of that is to try and avoid some of those, shall we say, suboptimal outcomes where you may go and fix a road and then so much down the road you go and fix a drain. It's those kind of things we want to take out of the system because they're the efficiencies that allow you to do more, doing those kind of things. And that all this has been written around supporting the transport system as an asset.
I think we've been on a journey, haven't we, over the last 15 years. And I know, Matt, you've shown me the presentation on the AI device and the scanning and looking at pothole defects in detail. That's obviously bringing AI power into it. But for me, just in terms of total numbers, is that AI feature kind of introducing the input numbers into the total defects? Or is it that we're still working on public reports through the reporting system? Just thinking how that translates to the previous topic really about prevention and proactive repairs, and when we identify a road that it's actually at the end of its life in real time. And obviously we've got a better frequency now of check based on that AI check.
So yes, the system we use does identify potholes, but it's in a beta testing model at the moment. So it will identify 3 types of defects, which are minor, moderate and severe. We're working with the suppliers of the AI now to sort of put some understanding around how the AI can support depth measurements of those and a little bit around the perception. So this doesn't replace the inspection team, it supports them in essence. But when we start to have a bit more confidence and understanding of what the outputs are around pothole detection through AI, we can start to feed those into sort of the programme that you sort of referred to initially.
I think it'd be interesting to AI versus the person, especially on defect counts, because that's an incredible system, and it definitely should be used to its capability, especially with the number output. It'd be interesting to see that difference and the delta between, you know, what's in the AI and what's on the reported system. I think hopefully we don't see a massive difference, and we've got loads of people reporting, including councillors in this committee. Councillor Jones, over to you.
Can I just on that, and AI is a great tool, but I do now have a monthly discussion with colleagues, other councils, strategic highways colleagues and cabinet members in other councils. And one of the lessons actually came out yesterday on our call was actually they've had to sanitise their AI reports to remove crisp packets and water bottles and things like that that have been picked up by the AI. So it definitely is getting better. It definitely is a step forward, but it isn't a total solution yet. And there is an element of human input to sanitise things like that.
Yeah, definitely work in progress. Councillor Jones, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is, firstly, I'd like to say thank you for updating the policy from 2018. Just on paragraph 10, the stakeholders, I just want to know if the stakeholders, have they been consulted and have we had any feedback from that at all, please? Thank you.
So yeah, engagement with stakeholders has been ongoing effectively through this process. So not just with, but predominantly internally in the first instance, just to try and get the process that we want around the asset management principles that we want to embed. We have shared the document with other authorities for their view as sort of a peer review on what we're doing and whether we're going in the right direction. Because a lot of the code of practice talks about consistency with other authorities, although you embed your own principles and your own sort of approach. But yeah, it's a continuous review with stakeholders in essence. The document's not intended to be one size just sits on the shelf. It's intended to be a dynamic document anyway, so we're intended to make amendments to the process and the principles as we move forward in line with recommendations that we're aware are going to be released through the new well-managed highway code of practice, which is under review at the moment, and also the DFT requirements that are continually sort of evolving also.
Thanks, Councillor Jones, for that. Just in terms of LGR, looking at next year, we know obviously the boundaries now in place. How, just if you could take us through kind of forward visibility on the plan of planned works around how we're going to kind of divide the numbers or the asset numbers and be able to translate that in readiness for kind of next April for the shadow councils.
Very much in the early days of that. So obviously we've been waiting for the announcement that's been in the previous week. The systems we have set up can be configured to produce those linear sort of boundaries and refined areas. So we have an awful lot of condition and inventory data around predominantly carriageway, drainage, footways and things like that. So what we intend to do in structures is bring that into the system that we're configuring at the moment, change those boundary locations and get an understanding of what the network looks like now, what the condition looks like now, where our risk profile may be across Staffordshire, but in the two new unitary authorities. So very much early days, but we're aware that's something we need to progress.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Thank you for that. Councillor Bentley.
Thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation. Mine was more just well-maintained network. I think we're getting there on the potholes. I think everything's moving forward. The only thing I'm struggling with in my area at the moment is the weeds on the pavements and the gullies. It's as if we've, I don't know, a couple of years ago, maybe 10 years ago, you regularly see the quad bike guy going around spraying weeds. And I can honestly say I haven't seen him for 5 years. And I've got one, I mean, I'm on an A road, the A521 and the A522. The A521, I saw her only yesterday, this young lady walking to school. She walks to school both directions. She's walking through weeds nearly 2 foot high. And I do report it. I had the maintenance team there a couple of years ago, but they could only do so much with a shovel and a brush. And I'm just thinking, is that on the, because that's what people are seeing, isn't it, the weeds growing out. I just wonder where that fits in and what you're going to do different. And that's one. And the other one is, I believe that we have some of the inspectors have an inspector route, so they do the same route all the time. So is that something they'd pick up as they was driving down the road that the weeds wanted addressing, or would they only be looking at potholes? Thank you.
Just thinking, is that question relevant to this topic? So we're on asset management policy and strategy at the moment, not probably applicable for weeds, but open it up to the officers if they want to respond.
Yeah, I can pick that up. I mean, these documents are intended at that sort of strategic level rather than the operational level. Also appreciating capturing that sort of condition and perception elements are important to inform the strategy. So we do sort of look at those processes. There are 3 weed treatments per year. The inspection teams are looking at primarily safety defects rather than things that may be sort of more aesthetic and longer deterioration impacts. But just leaning back on the AI, this is the sort of thing that the AI is starting to be configured and calibrated to capture. So we will get more of that type of data, and we do recognise the perception element, but also the impact that weeds can have on the deterioration and the fabric of the highway as well. So, yeah, multiple approach.
It's okay. I mean, just from light-hearted stuff, I think, does it identify the type of tree, the buddleia that's growing as well, the AI? Yeah, I don't know. It's,
Not yet, no.
Okay.
We are sort of looking at how we can use the video imagery that's captured alongside the AI to help take some of our inspections off the network around things like trees and ash dieback and the like, but the AI is not quite there yet, no.
Just an informal recommendation from me. I think every councillor, including all the members of the council, should look at that, software and programme, because I think it's substantial and it'll alarm us in the right way to obviously identify defects. Just looking at the highways and wrap up, is there any other questions on this topic before I close? Okay, so I'll wrap up. In terms of the recommendations, review and comment on Staffordshire County Council's highway infrastructure asset management policy and strategy, which sets out the strategic approach for managing and maintaining and investing in our county's highways infrastructure assets. Can I ask someone to move the motion? Councillor Griffiths, and second, Councillor Jones. Thank you. Okay, moving on. One that I think I'm really pleased that actually we've got this winter service policy straight ahead of, in front of winter. So we're all eager, I believe, to talk about lots of things, including DHP funds, how that kind of gets through in terms of grit bins, making sure that we're opening it up to town and parish councils. That would be another interesting topic. But just in terms of the forward approach, I want to understand a bit more about the strategic highway hierarchy to better reflect the network and the importance of while maintaining our existing winter coverage. So great topic, and one that's right at the right time, I think, within the work programme to discuss this today.
Yeah, well, you've covered part of what I was going to say in that. Yeah, I mean, this is an update of the winter service policy for 2026. And it should be noted it's now 11 years old. It was 2015-16 when last updated. So we've had a number of changes out there around the network and the way vehicles flow. Previously, it was based on sort of historic traffic groupings, that how the roads were treated, and this policy brings a more holistic carriageway hierarchy to it. And where it replaces the traffic groups, and the groups do not completely mirror the existing treated roads, these roads will be identified as exceptions and continue to be treated. So we're not looking to remove them, but we're looking to make sure we're using a more modern way of categorising roads going forward and understanding what it means for the network in the future. So all the roads that are treated under the 2015-16 policy will be treated under this new policy from this October onwards, which is when it's due to be implemented. It also incorporates within it, you'll all have seen my proposal around just the management and understanding of gritting and grit bins out there. And for clarity, that isn't about the circa nearly 3,000 grit bins that we already have on our map that are identified either strategic or community-led and are part of our filling plan. But it's about those requests, and there was a lot of requests this last year, and I assume it's probably been the same every year, for additional grit bins in certain areas where they wouldn't meet the assessment criteria. And under the policy, you wouldn't provide one. So I've tried to develop a policy that's incorporated in this that allows members or local councils, be it parish, town, borough and district as they are now, to say, actually, for our community needs, we will fund a grit bin in that area, and Staffordshire County Council can effectively, you be our service provider for it. So they don't have to go out and buy it. They don't have to go and get a third party to come and fill it. They can come to us and we will do it on their behalf, but it's at their expense. So it allows those areas that don't fall within our categorisation to get some support from the local councils and communities in meeting any identified needs, and that's been incorporated within this. And it wasn't about taking anything away or making people pay twice for filling the grit bins that we already fill, as perhaps has been reported at times. It's purely about additional. It's also wraps up in that any that have already been provided that may have been ad hoc by parish councils or borough councils that are sat on the highways network, i.e. within the areas we define as highways, which we should be aware of. We should know how they're being maintained. We should know how they're insured. And we should know who to contact in case of any issues. And that isn't necessarily the case. So the exercise is also written out to all the councils, asking them to provide us with their information. Interestingly, very few think they have any grit bins out there at all, although we had identified grit bins that we're not aware of on the network. So it allows us to make sure we clean up the network and remove any redundant assets and make sure that actually everything out there on the highways network is known about. We know the maintenance mechanisms, and if necessary, that can be provided through the county council. That's been incorporated. So it's open to you, over to yourselves.
Thanks, Councillor Mason, for that. Open the questions up. We've got plenty of time for this topic. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, obviously last winter, particularly, I think it was January the 6th, we had a well documented, I think, and a lot of community disapproval with the gritting that the County Council carried out on North Staffordshire's roads. I think ACT got together later on in that weather episode further south when they were affected more by the snow. But I think when people see a new policy coming forward, they want to see what has been improved on from the old policy, but also what has been learned from particularly last year, which is fresh in people's minds. We saw probably not the quality of gritting which we've seen previously on Staffordshire's roads, and I'd like to ask, in the new policy, there's minimal changes, it says, obviously, as you've said, portfolio hold also, it says in the report. So what tangible improvements will residents see compared with last winter? I know it's very difficult, gritting, isn't it? But I think, on balance, last year, particularly in the beginning of that snow episode at the beginning of January, I think the County Council was left wanting on this. So interested to see what the new policy will do to improve so that ahead of next winter and future winters we don't have that same problem.
Well, my first comment is I actually don't accept that characterisation of it. There were challenges, but the challenges were brought about by external circumstances. The gritting that took place from the beginning of January right through that cold snap was wholly encompassing of the entire primary and secondary routes. 2 grittings of the primary a day and a gritting of the secondary every day, at least one. There was no roads that weren't gritted during that period. We have the data and we published it at the time, so it was very clear what we were doing. However, a couple of things came into play. One was the extreme low temperatures brought the road temperatures down to the point where the grit actually became less effective, and it does have like a -8 point below which it starts to become very difficult for it to actually activate and to create the protections that you want. 2, actually, because of the low temperatures and the nature of the weather, the actual traffic volumes fell significantly, and it relies on activation. So we weren't even getting that constant activation of it, and that resulted in a less than efficient outcome. But it wasn't the service. There was no service missing. There was no lack of grit out there. In fact, we used thousands of tons of it. It was a combination of external events, and that could happen again and isn't something that necessarily we can address within this policy. What this policy does is ensures that level of service across 40% of the network, which is one of the highest in the country, is maintained while coming up to standards after 11 years of having a review and bringing it into a more modern approach in terms of how we assess what routes should and shouldn't get gritted, with the proviso that where routes fall out of that reassessment, they're being maintained as an exception within the plan. So I don't accept the basis of the question. It was not a shortfall in the efforts of the gritting crews or the county to get grits on those roads. It was a combination of external events.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Councillor Tapp.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a documented fact that Cheshire East and the City of Stoke didn't have the same problems on that night, and that their roads were gritted and didn't experience the problems which the portfolio was commenting on. But I'd just like to go on, move on.
Can I clarify that?
Can I get my question in first?
Councillor Mason.
They did have the same problems. It isn't correct to say that they had no problems similar. They had very similar problems due to those very similar external factors.
Yes, they may have done, but they coped with them better, in my view. That's my view. And I think the view of many residents. So there was a lot of frustration last winter, obviously, as I say, and during that January period. You'll accept that, I think. And I think it was also a lack of communication and real-time information sharing. So it's just if in this new policy, if the portfolio can give us indications where communication tools can be used better, and also whether there is yet a sort of a live monitoring system of where the gritters are out at the time. I know we have the map with the different areas that would have been done. I know a few days later we got where they actually were at what time they were, with a little time thing attached to it, which residents could scrutinise. But is there any move towards a real-time information sharing, which I think would dispel some of those, if you call them myths, as people call them, realities outside their window of the lack of gritting during that period?
I'd resonate with that as well, that point around. I mean, if we look at our Scottish, neighbours there, they've got a bigger problem than us northbound. But you can actually look at the ploughs live, their routes, their live routes, where they are, where they're going to be going. Again, that just gives visibility to residents and confidence that the gritters or the ploughs are on the way.
Well, yeah, it is something we're looking at. It isn't something we've got. It isn't something we've ever had. I mean, the GPS data off the gritters have been available for a number of years. It's never been looked into before, so it is something we've raised and something we're looking to see if we can develop. When I say use the argument between myth and reality, the myth is that they weren't gritted. They were. The reality was, due to external factors, the efficiency of doing so wasn't up to the level everybody would have liked. But it is a myth, a total myth, to say they did not get gritted. And that's the point I'm trying to make.
Thank you, Councillor Mason, for that point. Yeah, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you. I've been a town councillor and a district councillor, so grit bins and grit is very topical at the part of the winter. And I like the idea of the trackers, because people was asking me. Maybe we could have a designated number in the winter that a councillor can phone up and get an update in their area. That might be something just for the winter period, that we've all got a number that we don't give out to the, we just got a number. So if somebody phones us up with a concern, we can get through to somebody relatively quick, because the snowy conditions, like you say, they don't last forever, do they? And the other one was, I'd love the update on the grit bins. I'm going to definitely be purchasing some. Would it be feasible to have them removed in the summer and put in one of the depots? Is that too much to ask? It saves them just sitting there all summer. Is that something we could consider, especially if we're putting them in areas that, like you said, probably won't fit the criteria? But, I'm just using one of my examples. I've got two big housing estates that have just got this little bit of a steep road that causes chaos. For the sake of 2 grit bins, that all my problems will go away over the winter. But would it be beneficial to remove them in the summer and put them in some storage ready for the winter and then come back clean? It might just look a bit more proactive. That was it. And then the Ice Busters, I've just clicked onto the link. I was part of the Ice Busters team years ago, and we used to phone up and have a little bit of sand and salt delivered to one of the parish depots. so we could just go and get some on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday if we needed some somewhere. And it did make a little bit more flexibility for you, because the salt was already there, a couple of ton, and you know, the good Samaritan ice buster man could just go and get a couple of bags and put it around the council bungalows or whatever. And it did work, it just made it a bit more. But I'm really grateful what you're doing, and just think we could just... And, oh, sorry, I know I'm a million miles an hour. And the other one was, last year, we had a couple of local lads who bought tractors with ploughs on. Now, whether they should have done or shouldn't have done, but they did really help us. And how do we maybe make them more official, or is there somewhere I can introduce them to so they can go through? Because they had got all the tattle. The only thing they were short of, really, was a bit of sand and salt. But they did do us a favour. Thank you.
Right, well, I'll take some of them in order. The last one, last winter, I did actually put out a public call that people that did want to get involved, if they've got tractors with ploughs and that, to get in touch with the council, and we'd see what we could do about getting them on the official list or whatever. Because we're always looking to see what more can be done. I mean, the ice busters, if that's a local community initiative, I mean, the grit bins are there for the community to use. So if people want to go out on a regular basis and use that grit across the highways and the pavements, then that is really what it's there for. In terms of taking the bins away, while it might seem attractive, it actually is an unnecessary expense, because you've got to do that. You've got to take them away, and then when you're doing your refilling, you've actually got to take the bins out as well, which is going to be more expensive because you need more vehicles and things. So we don't generally take the bins away. My suggestion is when they're provided, they stay there. They're a reminder that they're going to be filled as well, of course. So.
I think the rural roads are always, a challenge, aren't they, at those periods of time? Are we looking to kind of innovate a little bit around communicating through local farmers and being able to give them an allocation of grit this year?
We already do that up in North Staffs anyway. A lot of the rural roads are maintained by the local farmers, not by ourselves directly. One of the reasons being it's actually difficult to get the gritters there in the first place. When the weather's really bad. So we're already doing that. We don't do it necessarily on a county-wide basis, but we will consider it where perhaps it's a better solution, i.e. where it's difficult to get the gritters in there. And of course, a lot of rural roads don't necessarily get a grit visit. We only do 40% of the network, so it does depend on that budget, that ability to finance any wider gritting across the currently ungritted network. We have to concentrate on the primary areas and the hierarchy of roads, because they're the ones that get the most traffic, serve the schools, serve the hospitals, and provide the connectivity.
Thank you. Councillor Bentley.
Yeah, thank you. Like I say, I think we're going in the right direction. We might just have to be a bit flexible again this winter till trying out any creases, if you like. But I think we're getting there. And I think there's people out there who want to help, people who live next to the school. If we just drop them some grit off, they'll put it out for us. It's just a matter of making it a little bit easier. But I think we're on the same wavelength. So thank you. Appreciate it.
I just wanted to ask a bit more about DHP fund and how and the criteria and the policy around that for councillors to tap into that and make it available, just for the grit bins, or at least resources going there.
Well, the policy now does allow you to use your DHP fund to provide grit bins and to service those grit bins. And as I say, the principle of that is we get lots of requests that, quite frankly, aren't going to get approved. We're not going to be providing additional grit bins through the winter service schedule because they don't meet the criteria. But we recognise also local communities that local need might actually think that grit bin's worth paying for. And therefore, your DHP fund can be used to provide that grit bin and service it year on year. You pay once to provide it, you pay a smaller fee year on year to service it. And that's down to the local councillor or the local parish or town councils or whoever to approach us. The councils don't have to use us. They can say, we want to put a bin on the highway, we're going to service ourselves, we'll look after it completely. Or they can just come to us and we'll say, we'd like a bin on the highway in this place. We recognise it's something we've got to fund. We'll pay you to provide it, then we'll pay you each year to service it. That's how the policy is going to work.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, the grit bin issue is a headline-grabbing initiative, isn't it? But in reality, are we not going to get areas which there's going to be unequal provision, particularly where there's parish and unparished areas? And then the fact that, the county is not going to be refilling bins that aren't its responsibility, as it would seem. You're going to have a confusion on who's responsible. Will there be the name of the parish or town council on the grit bin to prove?
Yes.
And if the county councillor has actually asked for one to be put in place and then hasn't provided ongoing through the DHP for that filling throughout the year, will it be pointed out that that county council has done that and left an empty grit bin? Because there's nothing worse over the years since I've been a councillor of calls in, particularly after a snow event, when the bin has been emptied, obviously by people using the grit, and then either doesn't get replenished through that season or is replenished very late in the season. So we have many weeks of issues of no grit. And then, of course, at the moment, obviously the County Council is the sole responsibility for filling those grit bins that it has, that are under its responsibility. I don't see many in the district I come from of grit bins that have been put by other authorities. But this will lead to a proliferation of these if this policy were to be fully taken up. And I come back again to the unequal provision that we'll have across communities because of this.
Well, that's for the local members and the local councillors. And you talk about parish and town councils not being available, which is why I opened it up to district and borough councils as well, to make that provision, because I recognise not the whole of Staffordshire is equal in those opportunities. It might make unequal provision, but it makes provision in those areas that would have no provision at all. If that makes it unequal, I still think it's of benefit in that respect. In terms of will it have a sticker on it, yes, the policy says it will have a sticker on it, identified who owns it, and they will report a call. Even if we service it, it isn't our asset. We will continue to service those bins that are on our asset base, those that are shown as both strategic and community-led bins that we fill, of which there's nearly 3,000. Strategic are filled more than once a year. Community are filled once a year. None of that changes. Nothing's changed in this compared to what went before, other than there's now an opportunity for communities to have a better service through their local provision, through their local discussions, through their parish and town councils, their borough councils, or their local county council member. Yes, this will be affected by LDR, but when writing this, I left LDR to one side because I felt there was a need arose out of my first year of sitting here, seeing the level of demand coming from the communities that couldn't be serviced. I had a choice to carry on ignoring it, or I could think about how could it be serviced through other routes. It isn't something we have the budget for within the county council, and if we were to try to do it, the expense and the provision across the communities would explode. Therefore, I opened it up to members, I opened it up to local councils, and I think regardless of whether or not some take it up or not, for that local area who decide it is worth their making the provision, it's of benefit regardless of the wider disparity across the whole of Staffordshire, because it's serving a need that that community has identified.
Thanks, Councillor Mason. I've got another question around tonnage of grit that's left at the end. I think we got down to about 17,000. I might be wrong this year. But I think we started about 28,000 tonnes and then down to 17. If we ever get in a position where we haven't got any grit, what happens at that point?
We monitor as we go along, and it was a question I actually asked quite early on because we were using grit at quite a rate in that period, that early January period. It was going down at a significant, about 7,000 tonnes went down in 10 days. We will just get more. We will find the contingency, we will adjust our budgets for later in the year, and we will get more, and we will continue to service. It isn't a case of when 20,000 tonnes of grit is gone, we don't grit anything anymore. We will service that need. But to be fair, I don't think we've ever actually run out, have we? Got close.
Yeah, just to add to that, obviously we've got the, we maintain, I can't remember exactly the number off the top of my head, but a sort of 10-day complete supply in each of the depots, but then we've also got our own strategic salt stockpile as well. In addition to that, though, we source our de-icing salt from the Cheshire salt mines at Winsford, so we're not far away, only off the M6, and if we had to, we can send our own vehicles up there to get it rather than have to rely upon deliveries. So we're quite resilient in that respect. We've got good winter resilience plans in place, as Councillor Mason says. We did have a bit of an experience, I can't remember now, about 10, 15 years ago, which was a national experience at the time where there was national shortages, and we had to, as part of our adaptation to that, was to reduce the amount of treatment we were doing by prioritising the network again, which really comes back to why having that important hierarchy is so, having that clear hierarchy is so important, so that you can start to reduce from the bottom end up, if you like, and maintain the key artery routes.
Just got another question there on obviously when we get to the winter period, we transition from kind of defect work teams going out, defects, maintenance and repairs, and then we transition that to kind of the winter gritting period. I know this year I think teams in Burntwood went down to one team just on, you know, Cat 1s, Cat 2s that we're looking at. How's that going to change this year based on that? Are we going to put more teams still on the repairs just to make sure that those Cat 1s are done within the 24-hour period?
Well, it will depend on what I talked about earlier, which is innovation to look at the one-visit repairs through the winter period to minimise temporary repairs. If we mobilise, if that works out, we can fund it and we mobilise that into the depots, that will be a specific team for that purpose. And therefore, it will address, say, the reduced volume of resource available. Wherever they're not on standby or needed to call out because of the weather forecasts, we will drop their shifts round, provided it's not just for one day and then they've got to go back on nights again, to get them back on to core maintenance. But obviously during that winter period, it is all night driven. They do need to be on standby. We do need to react to the forward weather forecast. So we might keep them. They may not go out every night, but we can't just drop them back on days for one day and then put them back on nights again. So we have to work that to best effect. But there is potentially an opportunity in the innovation pipeline that means we will have potentially more repair works going on through that winter maintenance period than we have in previous years.
That's great. It's great to flex team ups in that. Councillor Bentley?
I was thinking the same. I was thinking about whether we could train them up to, you know, you see the privateers using blowtorches, don't you? Just warm the pothole up so it sticks, you know, if it's frosty, just something. But back to your grit bin initiative, could it be possible to have an email out suitable to things that we can send to the parish councillors explaining the costs and whether I missed something just? You said certain grit bins get filled so many times a year and some are only once a year. Can a local councillor, say myself, ask for the one that's done once a year? If it become empty in January, can I ask for that bin to be filled up out of my funding? And have we got the resources? Sorry, that's what I was going to get to. And if we haven't, can we get a privateer to fill it up? Because I had quite a lot of flack over a grit bin being empty from January. So I just wonder if there's a way around that.
There's two things there. This last winter we did do reactionary refills of bins that otherwise wouldn't have been. So the answer is yes. In theory, although the members' grit bin policy and the local council grit bin policy is written about bins they provide, it doesn't stop you from making a request and saying if it can't be done all the way, then I'll pay for it through my DHP. That would be as a reactionary one. What I didn't say, and I should have realised, is that in terms of the DHP funding for grit bins that you provide, at the start of the financial year, that money will automatically be subtracted from your DHP to ensure it goes into the winter maintenance schedule. And we aren't left in a position where we've got grit bins that the member is then not got the money left to fill. It will already have come out.
Thinking very similar, Peter. I was thinking if you do put a bin in, whether you have to maintain it to when your natural finishes a council, do you know what I mean? Say 4 years. I thought that might be a way forward. Yeah.
That actually will probably be just a slight tweak to the proposal, which is you make a 3-year or 2-year or whatever commitment. You can't just say it's this year but not next year.
Yeah, I think that all your problems go away then, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Any other questions at all from the committee? No? Okay. I'll wrap up then the winter service policy. Great to see that we're resetting an 11-year-old policy, DHP funds for councillors to be able to use. Good to see that we've got a plan going forward and being proactive against our winter service policy. And I think in terms of recommendations, it's just to consider and support proposed updates for the Highways Winter Service Policy. Could I ask someone to move the motion? And second, please. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll invite now the artificial intelligence business case to the committee. Thank you. Just to give committee overview of moving into item 8, so artificial intelligence business case. This is a strategic proposal, outlines key interventions to drive local economic growth, boost productivity and support skills development across Staffordshire. I invite now Councillor Hall, including the members Anthony and Darren, to present, please.
Good morning, Chair. Still morning.
Morning.
Thank you. I want to introduce this report with a fairly simple point. Artificial intelligence is no longer something on the horizon. It is already changing the way businesses operate, the skills employers need, and increasingly the way economies compete. So the question for Staffordshire is not whether AI is coming, it's whether we intend to get ahead of it or spend the next 5 years trying to catch up. The business case before you identifies a potential economic opportunity of around £2 billion for Staffordshire by 2030. But I don't want us to simply quote a big number and declare victory. For me, this is about something much more practical. Can we help a small manufacturer improve productivity? Can we help a logistics company use data more effectively? Can we give an existing worker the skills they need as their job changes? And we can make sure Staffordshire businesses aren't left behind because they lack the time, knowledge or resources of much larger companies. So the ambition in this report is for Staffordshire to become the intelligent heart of the country. That's deliberately ambitious. But the proposed approach is not to create a huge new council structure or simply spend money on the latest technology. It is to use the growth hub, our business support, our skills systems, our colleges, universities and partners to accelerate responsible AI adoption across the county. We have efficient delivery models and we should use them. There are risks around jobs, digital exclusion, cyber security, governance and making sure the benefits aren't concentrated amongst a small number of businesses or people. The report is quite clear about those risks. But there is also a risk in doing nothing. And my view is that doing nothing is probably the biggest risk of all. So, this is coming to scrutiny at an early stage deliberately. I want members to challenge the assumptions, challenge the delivery model and help us strengthen the proposition before it progresses further. Chairman, I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Opening up to the committee. Interesting topic. Any questions at all? Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Hall. I'm kind of wondering, how are we going to do this? Are we going to have an AI that we suggest people use, or is it just we are helping them to use the AI products that are already out there? That's what I'm kind of wondering what's going to happen.
Well, I think I'll pass it over in a second to my colleagues, but I mean the programs, it won't be how to use ChatGPT. I mean that's really not what we're looking at. We're looking to transform the economy, really. Support business adoption and productivity. So it's a whole range of measures, but I'll hand the details over to either of my colleagues.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously AI, the extensive nature of it, it's very cross-cutting, so it impacts on most of the council and its work. So what we've done is moved at pace in establishing an AI working group. So we brought in a range of colleagues, different teams across EI and S, So business support, the growth hub, really key to this. So establishing a front door where businesses can access support and guidance initially. So raising awareness and understanding of AI is really key initially. Well, then it's taking that further in terms of how we support those to adopt AI going forward. There's a range of products out there. So it's basically raising that understanding within our business base, what the products are, whether they're relevant to their business. You know, it's very, very extensive in nature in terms of impacting different businesses in different ways. So each sector is going to be impacted differently. So it's really important that we look at each sector, plan with that sector to understand what are the best tools to adopt going forward. On top of that, we're also supporting residents and communities. So we need to support residents and communities in developing their skill base. So at the moment, there are a range of skills gaps across Staffordshire, not least digital. And AI is heightening those skill gaps within Staffordshire. So what we need to do is move at pace with our colleges, universities, independent providers to uplift those skills within our communities.
Thank you for that. Darren, just on the presentation, is there any chance you could take us through the slide deck? I know there was a presentation there.
Yeah, I don't think we've got that to hand here, but I think it has been shared with colleagues around the room.
It's been shared, but it's on there if you want.
It's on the clicker. I don't know if it would benefit for 5 minutes if we just went through that. I think that would be good.
Yeah.
Just while we're waiting for that, are there any questions? Thank you.
So yeah, this is kind of like a set of summary slides just to take you through the key aspects of the business case. Obviously the business case in itself is very extensive in nature, so this is a quick set of slides that I'll take you through. So in terms of the key message around this, so the business case obviously highlights that there is a major opportunity for Staffordshire around AI. This can drive productivity, strengthen our competitiveness, and support economic growth across Staffordshire. There's an opportunity there to create jobs for our communities and residents, but what we need to do is move quickly in terms of raising their skills to access those jobs. So why AI matters to Staffordshire? Obviously everyone in the room is aware that this is probably one of the key drivers of growth currently across the global economy, and that's the same in Staffordshire. Probably one of the main drivers that we're seeing in our lifetime. It's impacting a range of sectors across Staffordshire. We've currently got an economy and a structure that's quite strong in terms of its opportunities around AI. So there's advanced manufacturing, logistics, construction, health and social care and digital, to name but a few that have got very big opportunities around AI adoption and what it can lead to. So it can improve efficiency, reduce costs and stimulate innovation, and also create those higher value jobs that we want to create for our communities across Staffordshire. And as you can see, we've done some research around what the kind of economic impacts may be for Staffordshire. This is based on a global study which we commissioned for PricewaterhouseCoopers. And what we've done is calculate that in Staffordshire AI could generate up to 2 billion by 2030. Obviously this programme will hopefully accelerate that and take it further, but that's obviously a big opportunity that we obviously want to grasp. So in terms of the vision, it was mentioned earlier, we want to make Staffordshire the intelligent heart of the country. AI can generate greater growth and prosperity for all of our communities. We don't want any of our communities left behind, and again that comes back to that skills development across all of our communities that's so important. There are 3 key aspects of this, so the strategic ambitions. So the first one is around the economy. We need to look at sector planning, as I've mentioned. AI is going to impact the economy in different ways, and it's going to impact all of our sectors in very different ways. So we need to look at those sectors individually and understand exactly what the benefits of AI can be. Alongside that, we need infrastructure development. So 5G is going to be really key. It's one of the key enablers of AI. So we need 5G to extend across our county. In terms of business support, we'll look to support business development, raise their productivity and increase investment and innovation in AI going forwards. And then alongside that, as mentioned, we need to ensure that our residents can access the opportunities being created. Key to that is skills development and employment support. In terms of the business case, so there's a key strand of the business case. So looking at business, we can raise their productivity, we can lower their operating costs, increase innovation and R&D efficiency across the business space, and make competitiveness stronger in Staffordshire compared to the rest of the country. Looking at the productivity gap currently in Staffordshire, we're probably about a fifth less productive than the rest of the country. We see that AI can close that gap if we move quickly into this space. So again, if we can support more businesses and residents to develop their skills, increase their productivity, then we can close that gap to the national. In terms of the barriers and business support needs, there are a range of key barriers to adoption. So there's low awareness currently within our business space, in particular within SMEs. There's limited time, skills and financial capacity across our business space. And also there's that concern around governance, privacy, cybersecurity and ethical concerns. So these are the barriers that we need to overcome with our business space. So working very closely with SME is going to be really key. In terms of existing support, there's a range of existing support across Staffordshire. So the growth hub is really key to all of this. We've got a range of assets and they've already done work in this space. So it's how we accelerate that going forwards. It's working with our partners as well. So the Chamber of Commerce has got an AI Academy. So it's tapping into that kind of resource that already exists and raising it further. We've got university-backed innovation programs at Staffs and Kiel. And we've got local businesses that are within this space and can support other businesses across Staffordshire. In terms of the proposed business interventions within the case, there are a range of them on the business side. So the growth hub is, as I've said previously, really key to all of this. So working closely with Rachel Wood is going to be really important. AI is one of the Growth Hub's key priorities within its new strategy, so we've already got a strong link there. And making the Growth Hub a single front door for our businesses is going to be really important going forwards. In terms of the business enterprise centres, we've got 8 of those across Staffordshire with around 300 businesses, so it's how we tap into that. There are kind of 300 businesses there that we've already got really strong links with. So it's how do we support those to understand AI and start to adopt it going forwards. We've also got a new programme in line around AI Growth Accelerator. So this is a wider Growth Accelerator programme. It's being led by Sarah Simpson and Anthony Hodges' team. We've already got ring-fence funding for this of about £200,000, and the programme will go over a 2-year period. What we've done is we've embedded AI within that programme to ensure that all of our businesses are accessing the AI support that's available. And then finally, the Growth Hub, the Growth and Skills Levy transfer. So the Growth Hub is leading on that currently. It's been transferring that to businesses in some of our key sectors. And what we can do is start to allocate some of that to AI. On the other strand of this is the community case. So this is very much focused on skills and employment. So looking at the benefits for our communities, we could see better public services going forwards, improved healthcare, new employment opportunities and better access to learning. There are also a range of risks as well associated to AI within our communities. So job displacements obviously are a big concern currently. There are a number of occupations that are being impacted already, and we see that probably accelerating going forward. So again, it's about reskilling those individuals, moving them into areas of demand. In terms of digital exclusion, we know that some of our communities and residents probably haven't got access to the technology that's needed for AI. So again, it's providing them with that access, so opportunities within our libraries, enterprise centres going forwards. In terms of skills gaps among workers and residents, we know that there are a number of skills gaps currently. There have been probably for a decade or so around digital skills. AI's accelerated that, so we need to move quickly in terms of closing that skills gap. And then in terms of the skills and employment response, the business case outlines 3 tiers of a skills framework. So the first tier is around foundational AI literacy. Tier 2 is occupational AI skills, and Tier 3 is specialist and leadership skills. In particular, in that last one, we're seeing on the live job vacancy data a big demand around AI specialist leadership skills currently. So again, it's something there that we can start to address with our colleges and universities. And then in terms of the interventions, there's a range of those. So firstly, a virtual AI skills academy. That's working very closely with our Staffordshire Jobs and Career Service. So Vicky Perry, they're probably the front door for our communities and individuals that are looking for work currently. So raising awareness of the opportunities that are being created by AI and the skills that you need is going to be important. We've also got the Careers Hub, really valuable resource that's moved into the County Council recently. So working with Paul Williams and his team to start to embed AI within schools. So we're looking at new curriculum currently, and now we start to embed that within a pilot number of schools over the next year or so. And then looking further afield, like looking at adults, we've got the Adult and Community Learning Service led by Amanda Darlington, and we're looking at developing a range of AI foundational courses to support adults with that first step into understanding AI. And then just to round off in terms of the delivery, governance and next steps, we need strong leadership in this space. It's very extensive AI, so it cuts across the entire county council and it cuts across most of the economy. So we need strong leadership, effective partnership working, so working very closely with our business base, education and training providers. And then we need dedicated resource. So the first ask is from the business case that will go through to Cabinet in September. And then moving forwards, this will move into devolution, and hopefully that pot of funding that will come to Staffordshire will allow us to accelerate this further.
Thanks for that, Darren. I think the prize here and the goal really is to look at AI. We talk about AI all the while, don't we? The buzzword. It's the kind of flavour of the month in corporate worlds. I think when we look at the biggest challenge is to really measure the productivity gap and the efficiency side. From a county council's point of view, when we look at internally, the efficiencies for processes from A to B, how are we measuring that, and what's the plan to kind of measure that productivity gap, specifically for officers, based on the fact that we've got LGR around the corner, and the complexities and challenges through that change management process are going to be there. So that'd be my first question. Also, how do we measure the adoption rate? Have we got an internal measure for officers around that to see who's working AI, who's not, and who may be struggling with it, to identify those skill gaps?
Well, I'll just chip and then I'll pass it over to you. I mean, we're not going to be measuring success by the amount of conferences that we have or the amount of clicks that are on the website. I mean, I agree we need meaningful. We need meaningful measures, and we need to measure the outcome. I mean, what we have got, and I don't know whether everybody knows that we've got this, but we've got over 300 businesses who work within our enterprise centres, and they're a great source of pilot projects and things like that, and they've shown a lot of interest in taking this up. So I'll just pass it back over to Darren to expand.
Yeah, I mean, obviously through the Growth Hub in particular and the enterprise centres, we'll be monitoring the business base that we're working with. So we'll be monitoring against a range of metrics. So looking at turnover, the impact on business turnover from AI adoption, looking at the workforce as well. So whether there's potentially a reduction in workforce and an increase in productivity and profits coming from each business. So there are a range of metrics, and that's through our live business system, so Boast that we procure, so we can monitor exactly what their financial metrics are for each business that we're working with around AI.
I mean, just as a practical sort of examples, really, of, you know, for the wider group. I mean, if you take a medium-sized Staffordshire business, AI could help them analyse machine performance, identify patterns suggesting that the equipment might fail, so it can actually, you know, do all that big data analysis, which of course a small business wouldn't actually have the resources necessary to do. Or if you take a logistics company, can improve route, load planning, all incredibly easy that perhaps they couldn't have done in the past. We're not talking about teaching people how to write a letter on ChatGPT or how to ask a question at scrutiny committees. We're looking at having a real impact on businesses.
Great, thank you for that. Any questions to Councillor Tagg? Thank you.
Certainly not one that I've researched on Copilot, but I think when I speak to businesses, particularly those that run businesses in town centres, for example, and retailers, they you forget the face screwed up when you mention AI, or they laugh. And I would just point out, and it's in the strategy, isn't it, is that those small businesses, you know, that's where, you know, the engine of the economy is, isn't it, in small businesses, those people that employ, you know, less than 11 people, for example. And you've got that in there, that we need to focus on those and make sure that they come along. But I think we've got to realise is that they're already using AI in a lot of the things which they do for their businesses, whether it's accounting software, whether it's Google Maps and Google Ads, whether it's Outlook, which has got Copilot obviously built in. I think it's getting that message across that they're already using it and how to take that further to get those, as was said earlier, I think by you, Chair, those efficiencies working better through their existing businesses. And for a small business, if they embrace as much of the AI as possible, they can not only, you know, increase their profit, they can make their business work better, help employ people better, and deal with the stress of employing people by making some of the things dealing with that actually run through AI, such as the payroll and stuff like that. So I think it's a message to get to people. People are either frightened, think it's funny, or think it's just another fad that will pass. I think this won't. It's got to be embraced by businesses and to get the benefit out of it. And I think this strategy is going along the right path for that.
Well, I'll pass it over to Tony in a second, but I always remember a friend of mine who was a publican in Stone, and he said the internet will never take off, and I think probably I would have those sorts of sentiments now, but I'll just pass it over to Tony.
Yeah, I think as we set out in the sort of business case and the plan, one of the really important parts in this is what we've seen so far. I think is AI, particularly in a lot of small businesses. It's happen chance. It's not a strategic approach. Things are sort of opportunistic, and what we want to do through this plan, I suppose, is to drive the communications around the benefits that AI can bring and the opportunities it brings for businesses and people, and around the opportunity that will bring, whether it be creating more higher value jobs in its use and application, but also the leadership in businesses. So one of the components in there is about using what the growth and skills levy, the apprenticeship levy, to deliver apprenticeship units in leadership around AI. It's both it's the design, development and deployment as a system. So you've got that holistic approach, and that's where you will be able to see the benefits and the benefits at scale to a business, rather than what we're seeing, I think, is sort of piecemeal type approaches at the minute, where as it rolls out and it's evolving, it's being done in a uncoordinated way. And what we need to do is for business leaders, both small and large, is to be able to see the benefits, but also then think about their strategy as a business and how it can be used. And so part of that work with the Growth Hub, in terms of the business advisors, being able to give that diagnostic support to businesses, but then also back that up with that leadership development to be able to deploy AI in their business in the context of the sector and the industry they operate in. And that's a whole part of this, and that's why you'll see in the paper there's there's a a demand side push in terms of the business sector and the opportunities they create, but also supply side in terms of it supporting the workforce to be able to take advantage of those opportunities and upskill themselves to both improve their lives but improve their careers as well. So that's what we're trying to set out in that plan, and hopefully that sort of begins to come across.
Thanks for that context, Anthony. Councillor Bentley.
Might be a little bit above me, this AI. I'm probably one of them people, like you say, at the other end of the spectrum. But I'm a great believer if we promote it, and like you say, we've got this opportunity now with LGR, whether we like it or not, it's coming, isn't it? And we've got to get everything working together, haven't we? So am I missing something? Could we start by using it a lot more, like on tourism? Could we use it on tourism, where you can ask it a question, what the things to visit in Staffordshire, and where we're at the moment, you have to go search for whatever you want, don't you, where you can just speak to it and say, I'm interested in this, and would it give the options of things to do in Stafford? Just if I'm missing something, I might be wrong, but that's how I'm looking at it.
Well, I mean, you can actually do that already. If I put in, I've got 2 days to spend in Staffordshire, what should I do? It would tell me actually now, not as. But going back to your other point, I mean, I know that Councillor Bagley is heavily involved in AI adoption within the council. I mean, we've got things like, I'm not exactly sure of the numbers, but I think it was 2,500 rights of way issues that for me, probably from my background, I'm saying that should be, we should deploy AI somewhere on that to speed that up. So I think it is happening. I think this program will, I think, accelerate that even within. I think I want us to take our own medicine really in that respect. So I think there's a lot of things we can do and improve, and I think they are happening. Gary, to the speed, I don't know, but I was only talking to Councillor Bagley about it literally the other day.
I do apologise if I'm not making a little bit of a sense. What about like buzzes and stuff like that? Can we connect them to the buzzes so everybody knows where the buzzes are, or the dust carts? Is that something, I don't know, you go to certain, I don't travel that much, but you go to certain places and it tells you where everything is. Then you come to Staffordshire and we've just got a piece of paper on the bus stop still. So is that something AI could help us with that on the transport strategies?
I mean, I'm not the transport expert, but I mean, I think we are looking to sort of have those dashboards, solar powered dashboards or whatever, on all of the on all bus stops. But I'll hand it over to Tony.
I can only speak to, I suppose, some of the initiatives where we're involved in, and you'll see where we have the totems, which given you the bus timetables and things like that. We're actually, through the sort of digital infrastructure team, working with the company that supplies that data. So basically that comes live data through the mobile phone network, basically tell you where the bus is and what time it's coming. We're actually linking that to some Amazon Alexa devices that we manage through Vocala, and so people in their homes through Alexa can see their local bus and know when it's going to arrive and operate. And we're also looking at the feasibility if, say, you've got some additional needs and you might need an assistant to get on the bus, communicating back through that Alexa device back to the bus driver to say, Tony's going to be coming to get on the bus and you might need a bit of extra time and a bit of assistance to get on. So there's that technology there now, and we're looking to test and trial that and roll that out.
Great. I was thinking similar lines, but I was thinking, could we do that in cafes and pubs and stuff where, you're sitting there, they've probably got Wi-Fi, they've probably got everything, all they need is the screen, doesn't it, that says this is available. And I'm just thinking about from a business point of view, it might benefit the businesses and the tourism. That's, going around in circles a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't tested it in Staffordshire because I generally don't take the bus to be. I use a train quite a lot, but not the bus. But I mean, in London, for example, if you put on your map, open maps on your phone, and say I want to get here, it'll tell you how long to get to the bus stop, when the next bus is coming, what number it is, how long it's going to take you at the other end to walk, and if you've got to put a train in between that, it'll do that as well. So I don't know if that's possible. I think it might be. So if you wanted to go on and get to Cheadle now, there's a chance, and I'll check it, that it might tell you how to do it online already, Gary.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Councillor Bentley. Just moving over to Councillor Baker, please. Thank you.
Thanks for the report. I spent a lot of the time going through the links on the report, like Chamber of Commerce, so looking at different courses people can take. So that was really useful. This, I think, does need to be promoted everywhere if you want to be like the leading, I forgot what the term, the heart of knowledge of the country, was it? It does need to be promoted everywhere. On the question on the presentation, there was a tier 1. There's different tiers of knowledge, I think it was. What was tier 1 now? What is the knowledge in that area that you would provide to residents?
So in the 3 tiers, basically, it's suppose use of AI is part of that whole essential digital skills component. So, you know, more and more of our life now involves technology, and so tier 1 is around those essential digital AI skills, so being able to use it. So that's what we see as the base standard for every resident to be able to use. Tier 2 is around occupational specific, so for those jobs where you would use it, and then tier 3 was around that specialist, i.e. where you'd be designing, developing and deploying AI as part of your role. So trying to give that, I suppose, that hierarchy pyramid type approach in the offer.
Yeah, I just think that's really important for AI literacy for the growing amount of the population of Staffordshire knowing how to use it first, and then they can advance to, if they have a job, they can advance on a different course and learn more about, I don't know, machine learning. I don't know, it depends on what their job is, or streamline like a process of admin and reducing admin, so on. So I think getting that general public, that basic knowledge is the most important part, and that can spread through the whole economy. So, yeah.
Just to give you a very real life example of something I was involved in. I was working with the business fairly recently, and they handed me a set of accounts and some forecasts, and I would say within 30 minutes of that utilising AI, I basically told them that they're going to run out of money in 4 months, and they're going to need 100 grand in 12 months unless they did something about the costs. So now, an accountant probably, I'm not an accountant, but an accountant could probably sit down and work that out, and it costs somebody about £1,000 to do that. I did that probably in about 20 minutes. Actually went on to give them 4 different scenarios if they increase their sales by 10%, or if they were off target by 10%, 20%, and gave them the full range. So that's the power that it gives people to, that sort of that line of sight. And again, small and medium enterprises, 2 or 3 who are working, in the businesses, probably aren't going to be able to either afford that or necessarily do that themselves.
Just quickly going back to the efficiencies, obviously, is there any ambition to look at headcount savings? Because I always think when we talk about headcount savings versus AI, I always think that just creates the wrong anxiety in the workforces. And if we want adoption, we should steer around not cutting heads, but actually looking at jobs for AI, because my experience is AI continues to be maintained by the individual, not the actual computer at times.
This business case is primarily about Staffordshire economy and business and skills. There was a wider conversation to be had about improving public services, but it's not a blank cheque to replace staff or remove human, accountability as such. Any workforce or service sort of transformations proposals would be, I suppose, considered on their own, on their own merits. But again, if I go back, if we look at highways, we've got a 600 million backlog of work. I don't know, whether AI can help that. That's not about reducing anybody. If we talk about rights of way issues, 2,500, well, I'd rather be opening up 2,500 rights of way. It's not about that. So who knows? But I think it's really about improving productivity as much as cost saving. But I suppose I would look at that and say, well, they are both the same thing anyway.
Thanks. Any other questions from the committee? No? Okay, I will wrap up this section then for AI. So incredible contribution, around 2 billion for Staffordshire's economy. The recommendations are as follows. I recommend to the committee that A, considers the strategic opportunities, risks and proposed delivery approach set out in the report in relation to the artificial intelligence adoption across Staffordshire. B, comments on the proposed direction of travel, AI-related business support, skills and development and supporting economic growth that creates jobs, raises skills and increases the prosperity across Staffordshire. And C, finally, provides any observations to inform future developments of Council's strategic approach and any subsequent decision makings by the Cabinet and relevant partners. Can I ask someone to move that motion, please? Councillor Jones. And second? Councillor Griffith. Excellent. Thank you very much. I wish you a good afternoon. Thank you for attending this committee. Thank you. Just moving on to invite Carly to provide an update on the work programme report for 26-27. I know committee members have worked specifically hard on this to make sure we've got the right topics at the right time. So over to Carly.
Thanks, Chair. So the work programme circulated is the draft work programme for committee approval today. Just in addition, we have received a briefing note relating to the M6, M54 link road, and I'll circulate that after today's meeting. A future briefing will be arranged for members to ensure that you remain informed of the latest project developments. Back to you, Chair. Thanks very much,
Carly. Just in terms of date for next meeting, so the date and time for the next meeting is Tuesday the 21st, or actually that's the date is September, I believe. Yeah, so September will be the next date. We'll just confirm that. Obviously, we've got holidays in front of us, August, so I wish you all well. There's no exclusion of the public today, so on that I will close the meeting. Thank you.